My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 29. And on the day I married the man I love, the entire family row at my ceremony sat completely, painfully empty. No dad walking me down the aisle. No mom dabbing her eyes. No sister waving at me from the front. Just white chairs and a silence that screamed louder than any organ music. Hours before I put on my dress, my dad called me from an airport gate. He sounded rushed, almost annoyed. "We'll celebrate later, kiddo. You know how it is. This trip was already booked." In the background, I heard boarding announcements and my sister's laughter floating through his phone. The last text I got from her before I walked down the aisle was a photo of crystal blue water and her legs in a beach chair. "Vacation can't wait, enjoy the wedding, sis." While my husband's side filled their rows, cheering and clapping, my side looked like a crime scene after everyone had already gone home. I stood there in my dress, staring at those empty seats, pretending my chest wasn't burning. That was the day something inside me quietly snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a fit. I watched, I remembered, and I started keeping receipts. Literal and emotional. 2 months later, the same people who'd chosen the Maldives over me called with a different tone in their voices, begging me to fly out for her big day at a luxury resort. They thought I'd show up, smile pretty, and play the forgotten daughter again. They had no idea how much I'd changed. Before I tell you what my dad said that night, and what happened after I picked up the mic at my sister's wedding, tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I want to see how far this story about family, boundaries, and payback will travel. I'm an ER nurse in Houston, used to chaos. Sirens, alarms, people yelling orders over one another. I'm trained to stay calm when everyone else is falling apart. But nothing in my job prepared me for the quiet kind of trauma you feel when your own family votes with their feet and chooses a vacation over your wedding. Growing up, I always knew my dad had a favorite. He runs a successful construction company, Mitchell & Sons Custom Homes, big houses, big clients, big ego. At church and in the community, he's the family man, the guy who gives speeches about hard work and putting family first. At home, family first usually meant Chloe first. My little sister, 3 years younger, the golden child with the big eyes and bigger Instagram following. I was the responsible one. Honor roll, scholarships, night shifts at the hospital. She was the fun one, the one Dad flew to Cabo for her 21st birthday, while telling me, "You're tough. You don't need all that." When I got engaged, I thought maybe this time would be different. Dad took me to lunch at a steakhouse, pulled out a leather checkbook, and wrote a generous check for wedding expenses like it was no big deal. "You've earned this, Lore," he said. "And don't worry, we're blocking off that whole weekend. Nothing's more important than walking you down that aisle." I believed him. I wanted to. For months, I sent my parents and Chloe photos of venues, dresses, mood boards. My fiancé, Ethan, a firefighter, asked politely in the family group chat about suit colors, rehearsal dinner times. Half the time, no one even reacted. 3 weeks before the wedding, Chloe posted a countdown on her Instagram story, Maldives bachelorette/content trip in 3 weeks. I stared at my phone. The dates overlapped perfectly with my wedding weekend. When I asked my mom about it, she said, "Oh, honey, it's just a few days. We'll make it work somehow. Don't be dramatic." My dad texted later. "We've already paid deposits. I'll fly back in time. Relax." I tried to relax. I told myself they wouldn't really do it. The night before the wedding, Ethan and I were in our small apartment, sorting out last-minute details. He was ironing his shirt while I scrolled Pinterest, trying not to cry. A notification popped up on his phone on the coffee table, a preview of a new message in the Mitchell family group chat. "Do you want me to open that?" he asked. "I never look in there," I said bitterly. "Be my guest." He unlocked his phone and his face changed in real time. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger. "Lauren, you should see this," he said quietly. On his screen, a stream of photos. My dad in a first-class seat, champagne in hand. My mom in a floppy hat. Chloe posing with her passport and a caption, "When your fam chooses tropical vibes over stress. Maldives, here we come. #family first." The timestamp on the boarding photo? 2 hours before my rehearsal dinner. No call, no apology, just vibes. My heart sank so hard I felt physically nauseous. "Maybe it's a layover," I whispered, grasping for any explanation. But then a video auto-played, Chloe squealing, "Next stop, Maldives. Sorry, Lauren, we'll FaceTime you from the beach." Followed by my dad's voice in the background, joking, "We'll be there in spirit." Ethan looked at me, jaw tight. "If this were my family doing this to you, what would you tell me?" I didn't answer because we both knew I'd tell him to cut them off. "Tell me honestly, if you saw your fiancé's family literally flying over an ocean instead of driving 20 minutes to your wedding, would you still walk down that aisle hoping they'd show up? Or would you already be planning your exit strategy?" I still got dressed. ER nurses know how to function on autopilot. You can be dying inside and still tape an IV, still call a code, still keep your hands steady. On my wedding morning, I did my own makeup with that same mechanical focus. Mascara, concealer, lipstick. Ignore the shaking. Ignore the empty text thread from Mom. Ignore the unread message from Dad that just said, "Signal might be spotty. We'll catch up after." Ethan's mom knocked on the door of the bridal suite. "Sweetheart, it's time," she said, eyes shiny with emotion. I forced a smile, grabbed my bouquet, and walked toward the sanctuary doors. The music started. The doors opened. I stepped out, and immediately saw it. On the left, Ethan's side, packed. His brothers, his cousins, his childhood friends. They stood to their feet, clapping, whistling, beaming at him and then at me. On the right, my side, 2 coworkers from the hospital, my college roommate, and 3 empty rows reserved with white cards that read, "Bride's family." All those chairs, perfectly lined up, staring back at me like teeth in a mouth that refused to speak. My knees almost buckled. Ethan saw it too. His eyes darkened with something between fury and heartbreak. We met at the altar, and he squeezed my hands so tight my knuckles ached. "You look incredible," he whispered. "You and me, that's enough." I nodded because if I spoke, I'd sob. The officiant began the ceremony. Just as he got to, "Who gives this woman to be married?" a loud burst of laughter crackled through the sound system. At first, I thought it was feedback. Then I heard it clearly. Waves in the background, clinking glasses, and my sister's high-pitched voice. "You guys, look at this water. It's literally unreal." The entire room turned toward the back where the sound booth was. The DJ and the church tech guy were frantically fumbling with cables, staring down at a phone on speaker. On the screen, facing the crowd thanks to some thoughtless tech, was my dad in sunglasses, drink in hand, standing on a deck over turquoise water. "Happy wedding day, kiddo," he shouted into the phone, oblivious that his face was now 20 feet tall on the projector. "We're tuning in from the Maldives. We'll celebrate later when things aren't so crazy here. Show her the beach, Chloe." The camera swung around to my sister in a bikini and a white cover-up, posing with a mimosa. "Vacation can't wait, sis. We'll repost your photos." She giggled, tossing her hair. Someone in the crowd coughed. Someone else muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." I could hear whispers starting immediately. "That's her family? They're calling from vacation?" Ethan's mom, sitting in the front row, covered her mouth in horror. The tech finally yanked the phone off the system, killing the sound, but the damage was done. The officiant cleared his throat, clearly rattled. Shall we continue? He asked gently. I looked at Ethan. His jaw was clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitch. We can stop, he whispered. We don't have to go through with this today. No, I said, surprising both of us. We promised each other. Let's just finish this. For us. I felt myself detach, hovering above my own body as we said our vows. I promised to love and cherish him. He promised to stand by me. The room blurred at the edges except for those 3 empty rows, burned into my vision, and the after-image of my dad's stupid sunglasses. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," the applause sounded thin and awkward. As we walked back down the aisle, Ethan leaned in and murmured, "I swear to you, Lauren, they will never do this to you again." While the guests funneled out to the courtyard for photos, I slipped into a side hallway, pulled out my phone, and opened the family group chat. The Maldives videos were still there, along with screenshots of Chloe's Instagram story, a boomerang of my dad raising his glass with the caption, "When your fam's idea of support is sending good vibes from over the ocean #family first." I hit save on every image, every video, every caption. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this. One day, there would be a reckoning. If your family humiliated you on a giant screen on your wedding day, would you confront them right away? Or would you wait, gather proof, and strike when they least expected it? The reception that followed was beautiful for everyone else. Fairy lights, great food, Ethan's friends dancing like idiots, his cousins giving heartfelt toasts about how he'd always looked out for them. Every time someone mentioned family, I felt a little jolt in my chest. When it came time for parents' speeches, Ethan's dad stood up, cleared his throat, and said, "I didn't get to raise a daughter, but today I feel like we gained one." The room, "Oh, Ed." I smiled, but my eyes stung. My side of the mic stayed silent. Between songs, Ethan and I slipped out for a moment of air. We stood just outside the venue under a string of lights, the faint sound of laughter drifting out behind us. "You okay?" he asked. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My dad literally photobombed my wedding from another continent. What do you think?" He reached into his inside pocket and pulled out his phone. "You should also see this," he said. On Chloe's public Instagram. A photo posted less than an hour after we said, "I do." My family in swimwear, standing around a candlelit table on the beach. My dad in the center, holding up a glass of champagne. The caption, "To my favorite girl finally getting her dream trip Maldives with the best fam on earth. #family first. #wouldn't miss it for the world." The timestamp overlapped almost exactly with the moment Ethan and I were exchanging rings. I stared at the screen until the image blurred. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I repeated, my voice flat. I remembered every time as a kid when Dad missed my school plays, my nursing school graduation, my first apartment move-in, always with the same line. "We'll celebrate later, Lore. You know I'm busy." "I'm done giving benefit of the doubt," I said quietly. "They made their choice." Ethan nodded. "Then we make ours. We build our own family. You, me, whoever respects us." Something inside me solidified at that moment. Anger cooled into something sharper, clearer. Boundaries. Consequences. "I don't want to scream at them," I said. "I want them to feel what it's like to be on the outside looking in for once." The next day, my phone exploded with messages. My mom. "Sweetheart, the Wi-Fi was terrible. We're so sorry we couldn't be there. The live call was our way of trying." My dad. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. We told you about this trip. Don't ruin your marriage over one weekend." Chloe. "Sis, it was just timing. You know I love you. Please don't be mad we watched the replay. You looked gorge." I let all of them sit on read. For the first time in my life, the silence was mine. Weeks passed. My job kept me busy. Ethan and I settled into married life, shared grocery lists, laundry routines, late-night Netflix, his turnout gear drying over the shower rod. Every once in a while, I'd see one of my dad's ads on local TV. Mitchell and Sons, building homes, building families. I'd scoff and mute it. Then, one Tuesday night, about 6 weeks after the wedding, Ethan walked into the living room with his laptop open, a strange look on his face. "Lauren, you should see this," he said again, that phrase becoming a theme in our marriage. On the screen was an internal company email someone had clearly forwarded to him anonymously. It was addressed to all Mitchell and Sons staff. At the bottom it said, "Forwarded by Anonymous." The body of the email was from my dad to his accountant, dated 3 days before my wedding. Maldives retreat charge. Please classify this under client development/staff retreat. We'll write it off this quarter. And yes, pull from the discretionary budget we set aside instead of Lauren's wedding contribution. I'll make it up to her. Later. My stomach turned. That check he'd written me at the steakhouse, the "you've earned this," he literally diverted it to pay for his island vacation. It wasn't just emotional neglect now, it was financial, deliberate. "So he took back your wedding money to pay for the trip he chose over your wedding," Ethan said slowly, "and then called you dramatic for being hurt." I nodded, jaw clenched. He turned my wedding into a tax write-off. That night, I opened a folder on my laptop and started dragging everything in. Screenshots of texts, videos from the ceremony, Chloe's posts, the email Ethan had just shown me. I named the folder Family First Evidence. For the first time, this didn't feel like petty scorekeeping. It felt like a case file. People always say, forgive and forget. But tell me, when someone turns your most important day into a line item on their expense report, is forgetting really wisdom? Or is it just letting them know there are no consequences? Nearly 2 months after the wedding, on a quiet Sunday morning, my phone buzzed with a video call from my mom. I almost declined out of habit, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered, and her face filled the screen. Full makeup, soft lighting, that rehearsed mom smile I recognized from all the years of smoothing things over for my dad. "Hi, honey," she chirped, too bright. "Do you have a minute? Your dad and Chloe are here too." My chest tightened. "What's going on?" I asked. The camera zoomed out. My dad waved from their living room couch, wearing a polo with his company logo. Chloe sat cross-legged on the rug in a white romper, ring glittering visibly on her finger. "Surprise," she squealed, holding up her left hand. "I'm engaged." I stared at the screen. "Already?" I asked. She'd been casually dating some guy named Dylan when she went on that Maldives trip. "I didn't know they were serious. He proposed on the same beach where we watched your ceremony replay," she said, as if that were sentimental instead of twisted. It was like full circle. "We have some exciting news," my dad cut in. "We're planning the wedding in the Maldives. Same resort, same overwater villas. A real destination celebration." And of course, we all agreed. It wouldn't be complete without you and Ethan there. My mom's smile wobbled. "We really want to make things right, sweetheart," she added. "This will be our chance to all be together, okay?" I almost laughed. The same resort. The same place they toasted my sister while I cried in a church hallway. "Who's paying?" I asked bluntly. They all blinked. "Well, we're covering most of it," my dad said. "You and Ethan would just need flights. And, we thought it would be symbolic to use the original wedding budget we set aside. Like, sharing it between you girls. Fair, right?" Rage flashed hot and clean through me. They'd already used that money on their first trip. Now they were planning to pretend it was still there, rebranding it as generosity. "We're sending you the official invite video," Chloe chimed in, oblivious. "We want you to do a speech, Lore. Like big sister blessing energy. It'll be so cute for the videos. After we hung up, the official invite arrived. A professionally edited montage of drone shots over turquoise water, slow-motion footage of Chloe and Dylan laughing in hammocks, voiceover lines about second chances, and family bonds that distance can't break. The final frame, Chloe and Dylan, Maldives, save the date, featuring special guest of honor, maid of honor, and big sister Lauren. I almost smashed my phone. Ethan came home from a shift and found me sitting on the couch. The video paused mid-frame, Chloe's face frozen in a perfect influencer smile. "So," he said, dropping his keys into the bowl, "I'm guessing you got the invite." I nodded. "They want me to bless her marriage, in the same place they toasted her for skipping mine, using the same money he took from my wedding to pay for their first vacation." Ethan sat beside me. "We don't have to go," he said. I stared at the screen for a long moment. "No," I said slowly. "We do." He frowned. "We do?" "I've let them write my story for 29 years, I said. "The overlooked kid, the understanding one, the nurse who gets it when they're busy." At my wedding, they showed the world exactly who they are, and I swallowed it. If I don't confront this, they'll keep going like nothing happened. They'll call anyone who pushes back ungrateful. They'll talk about family while using people like props. I opened my laptop, clicked into the Family First evidence folder, and started organizing it into subfolders. Wedding day, Maldives trip, money, public image. Ethan watched, silent. "What are you doing?" he finally asked. "They want projection screens and speeches," I said. "I'm going to give them exactly that." I booked 2 economy tickets with our own money. I booked us at a basic room at the resort, not one of the overwater villas they'd reserved for the immediate family. I bought a vivid red dress that made me feel like a warning sign. I also emailed the resort's event coordinator, introducing myself as the bride's sister and maid of honor, asking if I could load a special surprise tribute video onto their AV system the day before the wedding. She replied within hours. "Of course. We love surprises, just bring it on a USB." I named the file family_tribute_final.mp4 and smiled for the first time in weeks. If your family invited you to the very place they humiliated you, handed you a microphone, and gave you access to the projector, would you keep the peace? Or would you finally hit play? The Maldives is just as beautiful as Instagram makes it look, and just as surreal when you're arriving for a revenge mission instead of a honeymoon. As our seaplane skimmed over water that looked photoshopped, Ethan squeezed my hand. "Last chance to back out," he said. "We can tell them you got sick and spend the week lying on the beach and ignoring everyone." "I've been sick for months," I said. "This is me getting better." At the resort dock, my family was waiting like a welcome committee. My dad in linen, my mom in a floral maxi dress, Chloe in a white 2-piece set that made her look like she was auditioning for a bridal magazine. Dylan stood beside her, tall, handsome, polite, clearly still under the spell of the perfect family narrative he'd been sold. "Lauren!" my mom cried, hugging me like we hadn't spoken in weeks of stilted surface-level texts. I hugged her back stiffly. "You look great," my dad said, stepping in for a side hug and patting my shoulder like I was a client who'd just signed a contract. Up close, I could see more gray in his hair, more fine lines around his eyes, but the same practiced charm. "We're really glad you came, kiddo. This means a lot." "Does it?" I asked, my voice mild. His smile flickered but stayed in place. Chloe bounced on her toes. "Lore, that dress is fire," she gushed. "You're going to pop on camera. I told the videographer you're like our emotional anchor, you know? Big sister, old wounds healing, all that." "Old wounds," I repeated. "Sure." The resort staff handed us cool towels and coconut water. We checked into our modest room, still nicer than anything I'd stayed in before, but nothing like the overwater palaces I could see outside our window. My parents and Chloe were in those, of course, posting room tours that evening. Before dinner, I met with the event coordinator in the reception hall, a glass-walled pavilion overlooking the ocean where the ceremony and reception would be held. "Here's the USB," I said, handing it over. "It's a mashup of childhood clips, photos, and some messages from people back home." Only one of those descriptions was technically true. "Perfect," she said, plugging it into the laptop connected to the projector. "We'll cue it when you start your speech. You just nod at the DJ when you're ready." She clicked play to check the file. The opening frames, innocent childhood photos of Chloe and me in matching pajamas, clips my mom had sent over the years, played over soft music. I'd included those on purpose, to lull everyone into a false sense of security. "Looks great," the coordinator said, stopping it before it shifted into the less flattering material. The day of the wedding was a blur of heat and tension. Chloe's ceremony on the deck overlooking the water looked like a Pinterest board come to life. White flowers, gauzy drapes blowing in the breeze, guests in pastels and designer sunglasses. My dad walked her down the aisle, smiling like the father of the year as drones buzzed overhead capturing every angle. I felt Ethan's hand in mine, grounding me. During the vows, I watched Chloe promise to always show up for Dylan, trying not to visibly flinch at the irony. After they kissed and everyone tossed flower petals, we moved into the pavilion for the reception. Tables glittered with glassware and candles. A giant screen behind the sweetheart table looped a slideshow of Chloe and Dylan's engagement pictures. Yes, many taken on that first Maldives trip. Every slide was a reminder of where they'd been the day I got married. At our table, a few guests made small talk. "So, Lauren, what do you do back home?" one of Dylan's relatives asked. "I'm an ER nurse," I answered. "I patch people up when the people who were supposed to take care of them don't." The cousin laughed politely, not fully grasping the subtext. My mom floated by, touching my shoulder. "Sweetheart, after dinner, you'll go right before your father's toast," she said. "Softball things, okay? This is a happy day." I smiled thinly. "I'll speak from the heart," I promised. Dinner wound down. The DJ announced, "And now, a special speech from our maid of honor, the bride's big sister, Lauren." Applause. Chloe beamed at me from her seat, eyes already glistening, expecting an emotional, forgiving monologue she could clip for her followers. I stood, smoothed my red dress, and walked to the center of the dance floor. The projector behind me switched from the generic slideshow to a black screen, waiting for me to nod. I looked out at the sea of faces. My parents' friends, my dad's business partners, Dylan's family, resort staff with trays in hand. I took the microphone. "Hi, everyone," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "For those who don't know me, I'm Lauren, the older sister. I'm also the one person in this room who's seen Chloe and my parents when the cameras aren't rolling." A few chuckles. Chloe laughed nervously. "First, let me say, Chloe, you look beautiful," I continued. "And Dylan, you seem like a genuinely good guy. That's why I feel like it would be unfair not to tell you the full story of how we got here." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. My dad's smile started to look more like a grimace. I nodded subtly at the DJ. The screen behind me flickered to life. Childhood photos appeared. Little Chloe covered in cake, me pushing her on a swing. "We grew up in a house where the words family first were pretty much the motto," I said over the images. "At least, that's what we told everyone." The montage shifted. On the screen now, a still of the empty bride's family rows at my wedding, guests in the foreground, a stark void behind them. Gasps rippled through the room. "2 months ago," I continued, "I married my best friend back in Houston. You won't see those photos on these slideshows because my family wasn't there. The next clip played automatically. The video of my dad and Chloe on the giant screen in our church, him in sunglasses, her in a bikini, yelling cheerful greetings from the Maldives. Their voices boomed through the speakers of the pavilion. "Happy wedding day, kiddo. We'll celebrate later." "Vacation can't wait, sis." Laughter in the video. No one in the room was laughing now. I turned slightly so I could see my parents' faces. My mom's hand was over her mouth. Chloe was frozen, eyes wide, mascara already starting to smudge. My dad had gone pale under his tan. "While my husband and I exchanged vows in front of 3 empty rows," I said, "my family was here, at this very resort, turning our absence into content." The next slide, Chloe's #family, first #wouldn't miss it for the world post, blown up on the screen. Some of my dad's business partners leaned forward, squinting. One whispered something to another, shaking his head. Then came the email. I'd redacted the accountant's name, but left my dad's intact. The projector zoomed in on the key lines as I read them aloud. "Please classify this under client development/staff retreat. We'll write it off this quarter. And yes, pull from the discretionary budget we set aside instead of Lauren's wedding contribution. I'll make it up to her later." You could have heard a fork drop. "So Dylan," I said, turning to my new brother-in-law, "when they talk about family first, understand what that has actually meant. It meant turning my wedding into a tax write-off. It meant toasting your fiancé on a beach while telling me I was dramatic for being hurt." My dad shot to his feet. "Lauren, that's enough," he snapped, voice low but carrying. "Turn that off." I held up a hand. "You've had your image for decades, Dad. Your ads, your speeches, your family man brand. Tonight, we're just balancing the story." Behind me, the slideshow flipped to a split screen. On one side, one of his local TV ads, him in a hard hat saying, "At Mitchell & Sons, family isn't just a word, it's our foundation." On the other side, a zoomed-in screen cap of the line item, "Maldives Retreat," classified as client development, charged to family wedding budget. Some guests stood up murmuring to each other. One of his biggest clients, a local developer, stared at the screen, lips pressed into a thin line. "You're trying to ruin me," my dad demanded. "Over a scheduling conflict?" I laughed once, sharp. "This isn't about scheduling. This is about a pattern of you choosing whatever makes you look good over what actually matters. It's about you telling me my pain was nothing while you literally cashed out my wedding." Chloe finally found her voice. "Lauren, this is my wedding," she cried. "You're embarrassing me." I looked at her, really looked, terrified, humiliated, but also still not understanding that she'd done anything wrong. "I'm not doing anything, Chloe," I said softly. "I'm just pressing play." For a long second the room hung in silence, balanced on a knife's edge. Then, from the head table, Dylan slowly stood up. He looked from the screen to Chloe, then to my parents, then back at me. "Is this true?" he asked, voice low but steady. "Did you all really skip her wedding to come here? And pay for it with her money?" My dad opened his mouth. "It's more complicated than—" "It's not," I cut in. "You got the receipts, Dylan, literally." Chloe reached for his arm. "Baby, it was just timing, okay? We talked about it, remember? They had it handled at home and I needed content and—" She stopped, realizing mid-sentence how it sounded out loud. Dylan pulled his arm back slowly. "You told me your sister understood," he said, "that she was fine with it, that she was cool." His gaze slid to me. I held his eyes. "I spent my wedding day pretending I was fine so they wouldn't call me ungrateful," I said. "I wasn't fine." The developer client I'd noticed earlier raised his voice from his table. "Robert, is that your company card on that email?" he asked. My dad's jaw clenched. This is a personal matter, he said. We should discuss this privately. You made it public when you used company funds and then bragged about family values in your marketing, the man replied. We'll be in touch when we get back to Houston. He stood up, signaled to his wife, and walked out. 2 other men I recognized from my dad's TV ads followed. My dad's shoulders sagged, his mask slipping for the first time in my life. Lauren, please, my mom said, tears streaming now. We can fix this. Turn it off. We'll talk later. I swallowed hard. There was a part of me, the conditioned child, that wanted to obey, to smooth it over, to reassure her. But then I remembered those empty chairs, the sound of my sister's voice over my vows, the email line about I'll make it up to her later. I raised the mic one last time. Here's the thing, I said quietly, voice carrying in the stunned hall. For years, I told myself that blood automatically meant loyalty, that I should be grateful for whatever crumbs of attention I got, that setting boundaries was disrespectful. But ordinary people sitting in my ER at 3 a.m. have taught me more about real family than you have. The ones who show up. The ones who sit all night in plastic chairs just to be there when someone wakes up. Family isn't who looks good in pictures. It's who stands next to you when there's nothing to post. I turned to Chloe. I don't hate you, I said. I just refuse to keep pretending this dynamic is normal. One day, if you have a daughter, I hope you remember what it felt like seeing those empty chairs and choose differently. Then to my parents. You chose a vacation over me. You chose a write-off over my wedding. You chose optics over honesty. Tonight, I chose myself. I handed the mic back to the DJ. You can stop the video now, I told him. He did. The screen faded to black. Ethan was already standing by the door when I walked off the dance floor. We didn't run, we just left. No dramatic storming out, no slammed doors. Just 2 people walking away from a fire we hadn't started but had finally stopped pretending wasn't burning. In the hallway outside, he took my face in his hands. I am so proud of you, he said. I exhaled, shaking. I feel like I just ripped out my own roots, I whispered. Maybe, he said, but now there's room for new ones. Over the next week, the fallout spread fast. By the time we landed back in Houston, 3 of my dad's biggest clients had pulled out. There were rumors of an internal audit. His family man reputation took a hit when someone, definitely not me, but someone, sent a clipped version of the Maldives call and the empty chairs photo to a local reporter who'd once done a feature on his values-driven leadership. At first, my parents called constantly, long voicemails, apologies mixed with accusations. You blindsided us. You humiliated us. You ruined your sister's big day. Then the calls slowed. Then they stopped. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no group hug, just silence. And honestly, for the first time, the silence felt like peace, not punishment. I doubled down on therapy, on my marriage, on friendships that had quietly held me up this whole time. Coworkers who'd sat in those chairs at my wedding, Ethan's mom who called every Sunday just to chat, neighbors who brought over casseroles when we both had night shifts. Slowly, I built what I'd wanted all along, a circle of people who showed up because they cared, not because a camera was rolling. People in the comments might say, "You went too far. You shouldn't air family business in public." Maybe they're right, for their families. But for mine, public image was the weapon they'd used for years. All I did was stop cooperating. If you're listening to this and you've been told you're too sensitive for wanting basic respect, or dramatic for being hurt when people let you down, here's what I learned the hard way. Boundaries are not betrayal. You are allowed to say, "This is not okay," even to the people who raised you. You're allowed to walk away from family that only shows up when it benefits them. You're allowed to build a life with people who choose you on purpose. I didn't get the father of the bride moment I'd pictured. I got something else instead. The realization that my worth is not up for a family vote. So now I'm curious. If you were in my shoes, would you have hit play on that video, or kept the peace to protect their image? And have you ever had to choose yourself over a toxic family pattern? Tell me where you're listening from, and, if you're comfortable, share your story. Somewhere out there, someone needs to hear they're not the only one walking away from an empty row. From my perspective, this story isn't just about a dramatic payback. It's about a woman finally refusing to accept being second choice in her own family. Lauren's decision to expose the truth may look harsh to some, but it also shows how powerful it is to set boundaries after years of being overlooked. Sometimes the real revenge is choosing yourself and breaking a toxic pattern instead of staying quiet. If you were in her place, would you have done the same at the wedding? And have you ever felt like the forgotten child in your own family?